Episode 2 of Faithful Film, I have an amazing guest. I have admired this guy for a really long time. And for the first time, I actually get to see him face to face somewhat and have a nice little visit. Please welcome to the show, Mason Davis.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, man, the pleasure's all mine. You've got a very prestigious acting career.
Mm.
I'm not one of those guys that's like the schoolgirl secret admirer type people, but I am a secret admirer, and I've watched your work for several years now, and it is an absolute pleasure for me to just get to be able to talk to you about your process and about your filmmaking journey. Where did you get your start as an actor?
Um, my mom will tell you, if you ask my mom, that she knew I was going to be an actor when I was 6 years old because she walked in on me in the mirror performing a monologue from Men in Black, um,
Epic.
which I guess was a movie I loved as a child. And I don't recall that, but I did my first play. I got into like the love for performing when I was a young kid. And that started with music. I started with performing music and being a musician. And then I did my first play when I was 10 or 11 years old. I started auditioning for community theater, and and then I got really into skateboarding, actually. Like, this will come full circle, but I got really into skateboarding and I started making skate videos with my friends and sponsor me tapes. And so I got really into just like film production, making films and things like that. And so when I moved to Southern California, I wanted to be a director. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to direct skate films. And um, and I was in high school and I was in the film production classes, and you had to just act in your own videos because it's high school. They weren't going to provide actors for you. And I sort of just found a calling in a natural flow in acting and a knack for it. And that sort of garnered some attention from some agencies in LA. And the story sort of became its own thing. I wasn't planning on being an actor at first. I love to perform, but it sort of just because of my performances in my own videos for film production. Uh, yeah, I got a talent agent and my career started.
What was your first actual film?
Ooh, well, usually like when you get into the process of filmmaking, you start with a bunch of short films. So I did a lot of short films. I would go and volunteer my services at community colleges in Southern California, and so I did a lot of student films. And my first feature film, I think it was Cloud Nine by Disney. I auditioned for the main role in that, and I made it to the end of auditioning. It was between me and the guy who ended up playing the part. He had a little more LA credentials for with Disney, and so the director wrote a new part for my character or for me to be in the movie. And then the day I got to set, they were so far behind in production. It's a movie that is shot in the mountains and in winter, and so it was already, those kinds of productions always get pushed back and delayed because of the weather. So by the time I got there, they're like, "Hey, we don't have time for any of your scenes." So I was in like one scene in that movie, but that
Oh,
was technically my first. And the guy, he had a name, but then because the character got cut down so much, they called him random dude or random guy or random man.
oh
So
man.
my first role was random person in Disney Channel's Cloud Nine.
Oh wow. Okay. I might actually have to go and look at that and see if I can spot you now.
It's in the opening like 5 minutes of the movie. So
What would you say the project that you were in that was like your calling card that just really propelled your career?
I would say Saturday's Warrior. It wasn't my first lead role in a feature film, but it was the film that had such a cult following going into it, and the success, it had a lot of theatrical success. At the time we were battling, I want to say it was Batman versus Superman during its release.
Oh wow.
And we I mean, to be fair, Batman, I think, released a week or two before us, but we were outselling it. So
Wow.
it had a lot of commercial success for the producers and the distribution company. And that sort of catapulted my career.
So, yeah, full transparency. That's probably the first one I saw you in.
All right.
And that's where I started paying attention to you. And I thought you did a really, really good job with that one. But I'm going to be fully transparent with you. I was like, man, this guy's such a good looker. The camera lenses just smile at him that he probably was hired for his looks. And then you started singing a song. And I was like, wow.
Consider the flowers, the grass of the field, the fishes and the fowl of the air, the stars and the moon, the warmth of the sun, light and life and love everywhere. Consider this heart that longs to be loved, the spirit that's destined to be free.
This
Yeah.
guy's got some multi-dimensional talent. And then I saw a couple others with you, but the one that got me was, and my absolute favorite role that you played was Alexander Donovan
Mm,
when you in the Porter Rockwell trial
yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
Something about you taking on that 19th century Missouri accent as a lawyer and how you flawlessly and authentically delivered that so well. I was like, okay, this guy's more than just a pretty face. He's a bona fide actor.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a great one.
That was great.
I grew up in Tennessee, so I grew up around the Southern accent. I don't know if I fully ever adopted it, but I can bring it out. And then my brother's a lawyer, so a lot of the words I didn't even know what they meant because
Oh,
I
okay.
don't know anything about law, and so I called him up and I just walked through the script with him. I was like, "Hey, can you walk me through what I'm actually saying so I understand this legal jargon?" But that is actually probably one of my favorite performances I've ever given as well. So thank you
Wow.
for
No,
acknowledging
that's
that.
that's really cool because that's good character study. You use as an actor, you use what's available to you. And
Hmm.
yeah, going to be able and seeing words like overruled and withdrawn and like, what's my character actually saying here? What does he mean? And then
Yeah.
that's why it was so believable to me because you would have these one word lines of dialogue that would just come out so perfect and so crisp. I was like, this dude's got to be a lawyer.
I respectfully refuse to answer any question.
Careful now. Your tongue might betray you. Can you tell the court why the original person of interest, one silversmith by the name of Tompkins, was not charged? He fit all the descriptions issued by local neighbors of a man running from the area that night, no?
I respectfully refuse.
Can you tell the court why Mr. Eulinger was not considered a person of interest? He himself being a business rival with Boggs, no? You must have found it strange that it was his gun that was mysteriously stolen days before, and he was the one who handed it to you at the scene of the crime. Yet neither of you can recall certain details when connecting my client to the actual crime. Is it possible that one of the many people that were at the home that evening might have been the actual suspect who shot Boggs while hidden in the shadows? Still nothing, huh? Is there anything that you would like to say to this court that may help you sway this jury to the truth?
I respectfully refuse to answer any
Yes,
question.
you've heard it before. And while your testimony today may be truthful in your eyes, it is the farthest from the truth that we seek today. He's finished, Your Honor.
Yeah, I feel like that film kind of flew under the radar, as probably a lot of my work has, but that one, the writer, unfortunately, he's passed away, and he plays the
Um,
lawyer from the other side,
yeah,
Joshua.
Joshua French.
Um,
Rest in peace.
yeah,
Yeah.
and lovely, amazing dude. But the director who worked on it, John Lyde, he's become a really dear friend of mine, and
Oh, good.
we're always rooting for each other. And so when he had me audition, I think everybody wanted to play Porter Rockwell. We all do, because it's like, oh, like
Yeah,
this
everybody,
guy's
of
a
course.
legend. But he was so blunt. He's like, you don't look anything like the character. I don't want you playing this character. I want you to read for this character. And although the movie is obviously Porter's story, I'm really glad I got Alexander Donovan, because it's courtroom drama, and he actually
Mm.
does most of the dialogue in the film. And while Porter just kind of is quietly there. So I actually feel really lucky that I got to play a character that got to have so much screen presence.
And it did that a scene, that courtroom scene was so well lit. It was vibrant, and I loved the banter that you and Joshua French, God rest
Yeah.
his soul, had throughout it.
There's a deep conspiracy here, and I'm willing to shed light on this for all to see.
You shot him in the back in the dead of night.
And another friend of mine, Sean Stevens, playing the judge, and just kind of seeing,
Yeah.
him absorbing these different testaments that are being given. It was one of my favorite watches, and it's just a shame that it was a short film. I wished it was just a full-on feature film that hit theaters, because it had that production quality.
It did. John's very good at that. In fact, I've done a few shorts with him now, and all of them I think are worthy of features. I did a World War II fighter pilot film, and he built a cockpit, and we shot it in front of a projected screen that put us up in the sky with. I mean, it's amazing. And you watch it, and you're like, this looks like I'm watching Pearl Harbor.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's just another one of those short films that flew under the radar. But it's I gotta again say, John Lai he's such a talented filmmaker. I just feel like he people need to give him more money to make features.
Yeah, no kidding. I think he's doing that now. I think he's
He
got
is,
one that's
yeah,
about to
he
release.
shoots a few a year. That he
Okay.
directs, but he's always working with Candlelight and a few other production companies to shoot some stuff. But he gets work. I just wish he got more work, because I love it.
Wow. Yeah, it's really good. I'm glad you actually took that part on. And you've shown up in several LDS films. How much has your faith played into what roles you would or would not take?
That's a good question. And I would say that that answer has evolved over the years as I've
Okay.
matured and grown. When I got into acting, I was not even active by any sort of means. And I was probably about as far away from practicing Christian or faith man in any way. Um, and and then I had a series of humbling moments in my life that really brought me to discover that there was a God. And with those awakening moments, I realized I needed to turn my life around. So when I first got into the industry, I was highly into drugs and alcohol, and to the point where it became such a bad addiction that I got blacklisted from the industry. I left the industry because no one wanted to work with me. And I hadn't even had like a real. I was doing really big auditions at the time out in LA, but I never had booked anything big at the time, and so that sort of behavior was just demonstrated my immaturity for what I had. I don't think I've ever even had the same opportunities as I had then in this industry. And I was so young and naive and green that I blew it. So I left the industry. And then when I sobered up, that was when I got my first call from an old friend from high school who remembered me as an actor. And he's like graduating film school. And he goes, "Hey, I'm doing my capstone film. Do you still act? Like, you'd be perfect for my film." And I had just gotten clean. I was probably 2 or 3 months sober at the time. And I was like, I haven't thought about it in 4 years, but yeah, let's try. And so I went and did that. And that led into that Disney movie. That basically segued into me getting that Disney movie. So So when I first started, I was just hungry for whatever I could get. And then I moved to Utah. I started getting work in Utah. I moved to Utah and I started doing a lot for the church, a lot of LDS projects, and I think as I got a little more mature, I realized like how much value there was, how much missionary work there was in doing these works, and what media can actually be in terms of a tool for people. And you know, and this is like, nowadays it just seems like everyone's on a device, and it's like, well, that's a no-brainer. But you know, you look at 2014, it wasn't quite that bad yet. And so I don't know if any of us really understood what media was going to become, and how much of a part of our lives it is now. And at least I didn't. So I did kind of sort of take on this role as like, okay, I'm just going to do these movies because this is my way to serve my mission. I didn't serve a mission because during those years I had left the church and was on a dark road. And so I was like, this is my way of serving a mission. And then after a few years, I kind of was just like, I realized like I can't make a living doing these low budget films anymore. And so I started expanding my reach and taking on bigger roles in projects outside of sort of more of that Christian audience base. And I felt, although like those were probably financially my biggest successful projects I've worked on, they weren't as fulfilling. And I did have to sort of negotiate with myself on what I would and wouldn't do, and compromise in areas that in hindsight maybe probably wouldn't have. I don't know. It's tough because, you know, this whole industry, you're looking for your break. And so when someone can offer you a carrot and you think that might be it, you instantly start to convince yourself, oh, well, you know, it's okay if I'm in a film like this because of this, and that will get me to this point, and then I can really show what I stand for. And so I took those films, but I guess in the end, even though, you know, they paid more and they were more commercial hits outside of just the Utah and Christian markets, my career didn't move. It didn't move the needle in any way. So those are things you learn, though. Those are things you learn as a filmmaker, as an artist. And I think just as a person, you start to realize like, okay, like maybe I shouldn't have negotiated with myself on this one. But I think that's where the growth is in us as human beings, though, to acknowledge where we went wrong and to redirect our courses. So
100%.
Yeah, now I'm kind of in a stage where I really only want to take projects that inspire me or make me feel like I'm an artist again, like those Alexander Donovan projects where I'm like, okay, I get to really be an actor again, and take on a character that feels like I'm embodying somebody else.
Wow. I got to be honest. I didn't expect to be so touched by this, but what a redemption story, man. I did not know about this.
Yeah.
But now I just love you even more, because to me, you're not just an actor on a screen. You're a person with a redemption arc. My favorite type of character. That's beautiful, man.
Yeah, thanks.
No,
it's a longer, sadder story, but we don't need to get that deep into it.
I appreciate your candor on all of that. It's hard to open up and talk about the past like that. But I also love hearing it because I see that the way that Jesus Christ works with people in their lives and helps us all to heal. We've all done things we're not proud of, but man, that's inspiring. I don't know at what point you started to have the feelings that you've been having recently, but I just wanted to throw out a couple statistics just so those people listening know kind of what's gone on with you. You really took off in your acting career, probably based off the statistics. In 2021, you had 7 projects that were released.
Oh, wow.
and in 2022, you had 4, 2023, 2, and this year, 1. that we know of, according to IMDb. I'm cheating a little bit here,
Yeah.
but there's a pattern there that may have contributed to what you recently did, which you got unbelievably brave and you opened up about the necessities of life preventing you from doing things creatively and things that matter. And now I'm finding out that in a lot of ways, film is a little bit of an outlet for you to perform a missionary work, which is kind of a redemption thing for you. And so I'm seeing a lot more layers to what you're experiencing. And you acknowledge that through the necessity of providing for a family and whatnot, that you've lost a little confidence in yourself. But at the same time, you acknowledge that family is the most important thing to you, and you wouldn't trade your family for anything in the world. Are you willing, and can you share more about your frustrations and the hardship and the things that you're learning along the way?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm more than happy to. And I'll lead with, I'm always so willing to share my story or to, because I feel like the devil works in secrecy. He doesn't want you to share these feelings because he can isolate you, he can corner you. But there's so much strength in being able to be vulnerable and being able to willing to share these conversations. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on a public scale. I, because of my career, have sometimes more eyes watching the stuff I post versus others. But just even if it's with like your mom or a family member or a close friend, sharing is the way to connect with the human and experience with anybody. And honestly, I feel like it takes the power away from the adversary. It takes it away from him because he does not want you to feel that you're not alone, or he wants you to feel alone. And so the second you can share and empathy becomes a tool, then he's doesn't have as much ammunition against you. And so I'm more than happy to share my
Can I
experiences.
jump in for just a moment there?
Please.
Just because what you just said, I can tell you that when you shared what your struggles were, there were hundreds of men out there that went, "Oh, thank you, Mason. I'm not alone." I'm one of them. And I know several others that I'm not going to say their names, but I know of several others that have gone through the same kind of struggles. And they said, okay, we have a support group here.
Yeah.
Us men, we have a hard time exposing that we have a hard time.
Yeah.
We want to be looked upon as brave, solid, anchors that have it all figured out. And so, yeah, to be able to say, I don't have it figured out and I'm having a hard time with this. However, I know what my priorities are. I'm going to keep working at it. And I love that because it does. As somebody that has been held back from doing what I should do because of shame, that the adversary convinced me that I should not share because it's shameful to do so. I can definitely attest to what you're saying. It takes away his ammunition in a lot of ways to say, hey, look, this is what we're struggling with. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah. And yeah, it's tough. And to any of those people listening, just know you're not alone in this. And I genuinely was shocked by how many people reached out to me. I did not expect it. I did not expect that many messages, that many calls, that many texts, that many comments on Facebook or Instagram where it was posted. And yeah, I guess in a nutshell, I tend to I write better than I speak. So, my rhetoric, I can really think and ponder and put my sentences together much better than I can just on the fly in person. But I don't have much of a social media presence because I like my life. I like my privacy. I like to have my moments, and I don't feel like I need the validation like from likes or comments to be the reason I do stuff. And my moments are special to me because they're for me. They're for my family. And in fact, I live in Hawaii, and we moved here 2 years ago, and that was because I wanted to put more of my time with my family. And I wanted to spend more time focusing on making moments with them. What I was seeing a lot of this hustle culture is
Yeah.
it's pretty big mainland, but particularly where I was living in Utah. And it was a lot of this keeping up with the Joneses style of living. And I have we have a son, my wife and I, we have our son, and I was so worried of seeing what I was seeing other kids being brought up in this way where it was like addicted to screens, addicted to just stuff. And, and that's great. And if that is what makes people feel whole, that's fine. But for me, it's the moments. It's these real moments that I can have with my family. And so we sold everything we had, basically. Like we were able to put everything in an 8x8 cube that we wanted to bring with us, which was mostly surfboards and instruments. And we moved to Hawaii. We didn't bring a TV. We sold our TV, and now that's our life outside of providing for my family is these amazing moments that we're teaching my son how to swim in the ocean versus in a pool. I mean, the ocean is where I found God. That I was out surfing when I had my come to Jesus moment. And so for my son to have this love for the ocean as much as I do, it is such a beautiful, just a beautiful, beautiful connection that we have together that we get to share. And so in order to make this move work, to move here, it's very expensive to live here, and it's definitely not for everyone. It's not at all like vacationing here. Living here is a completely different experience than it is vacationing. And you really have to hustle and struggle to make a living to stay here. And my wife and I both work full time, and then I do freelance work outside of that. And I'm trying to start my own production company, making the content I want to make. And so, my days are filled with that, but I don't ever want to substitute my time with my family to be working. And growing up, I saw a lot of that. My dad prioritized working hard to provide, but because of that, I never saw my dad. I didn't have a relationship with my dad until I was an adult, because he was never home. He was never there. And then my parents divorced. And so like, I didn't get to have a relationship, and I don't want that for my son. So I want to provide for them. And so recently I made this post, and really, it was a journal entry. I wrote it in my journal. I document my thoughts on my phone. I don't know if it's as traditional as a journal, but I just write my thoughts in my phone whenever I'm feeling something of impact. And I just wrote sort of this frustration of, I hate not being able to, living here, I've taken this corporate job to be able to provide for my family, but because of it, I'm not creatively making the art that fulfills my heart, fulfills me as an actor, as an artist, as a filmmaker, storyteller. And I was just feeling a lot of frustration because I was seeing people who I really helped. I held their hands through the industry and got them started, and they're all, and this is like a typical story in Hollywood. So it's like I'm the first person to have this happen to, but you see your friend take off, and then you ask like, hey, could you introduce me to the person that sort of like launched your career? And they instantly don't remember you. They're like, oh yeah, sorry. Like, you were my friend before I made it. Now that I made it, I got a new group of friends, and that hurts. And so I had seen it a few times, and then a particular person of mine I saw was out there having a lot of success, which I want them to have success. But in this particular instance, he was actually taking credit for something I had done. And that was what really like bummed me out. And so I was just writing my feelings of like how I just wish I could provide for my family, but at the same time do the art I want to do.
If you don't mind though, we do have a job to do, so if you could just kindly not get in our way. Wow, That's powerful.
Yeah.
That feels good.
It's intoxicating, isn't it?
Hear it on this side of it.
Yeah, I know. Don't inhale. Don't inhale. It's intoxicating. You literally will get high. Not like fentanyl or things like that.
And openly and just wrote like, hey, like this sucks. It sucks not being able to make the money I want to be able to make. So like I know my family is safe, and secure, and at the same time pursue my art. I think with the recent election too, I was, obviously that brings out the worst in a lot of people, and saw a lot of negative things on the internet, and just made me feel really scared about this future for my child. It's like, can I even protect my child? I live on an island. If for any reason my island got cut off from outside resources, like, can I even provide for them?
Yeah.
And so I was just feeling a lot of feelings of just being scared as a parent, being scared as a human, and honestly just as an artist wanting to do what I love, but feeling like my hands are tied behind my back and I can't. So I wasn't planning on posting it. It was just a journal entry. And then sort of this thing I alluded to of one of my friends basically just took off his career by claiming he did something that was actually something I did. And I don't want to get into details because it's not fair for me to try to derail any of his successes he's having. But it really hurt my feelings to see a lot of 2 years of really hard work that I put into something, and then for someone else to take credit for it and then run with it. Yeah. was tough. And it's really hard to defend yourself when you're on an island and you're no longer really in that scene. And so I didn't even know it was happening until, just last week. So it sort of just made me feel like, maybe I can share this. Maybe I should share this, just because I don't know. Well, it was really a prompting that just made me feel like, it's like, this isn't for you. This is for everyone else. And I think that's always been the times when I've shared my emotional baggage is always been because I felt like I could help somebody else with it. And I did, and I shared it on our social media, and man, strangely enough, it turned into a really beautiful conversation with hundreds of people.
Yeah, it really did. It's been fun to follow. And I appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing these things. It sounds like it was a storm of so many different things coming from so many different directions all at once, which, it can make you feel completely helpless. And as you worded it, handcuffed. And you look at your little boy and you're just like, boy, what's this boy's future? And how can I give him something that's sustainable and beautiful when we're in an environment that isn't? Yeah. And I completely get that. I understand it 100%.
I was trying to throw my life away while my mom was fighting for hers. See, it's all about you in this game. No one else. Nothing else. Even if I didn't have to worry about the people who have it out for me, I still can't go back and change the things I've done. There's nothing I can do about that.
What is next for you, Mason? Do you see a future in filmmaking?
That's the only future I see, actually. This corporate job is sort of a means to an end as I'm building my production company. And the goal here is I've written so many scripts. I have several feature films, several short films, and I've been leveling up, I guess is the best way. I've been slowly trying to grow in the areas that I felt less confident in, such as operating camera and doing some of the things that I've been producing for the last 6 or 7 years now. And I haven't gotten a lot of chance to direct or camera operate. And so over the last 2 years with my job, I've gotten a little bit more experience with that, to the point where I'm feeling more confident that I'm ready to just go out and just start making my own films and telling my stories, the stories I want to tell, at least, and the ones that I think are inspiring, but as well as entertaining. That's always the biggest juggle with the market that I guess I've built my career in, is usually it's one or the other. It's really hard to tell a good story and be entertaining. Sometimes they kind of come off as didactic a bit and a little too much for general audiences. And I think there's such a hungry audience to hear messaging, like good, happy messaging. Um, and if as much as I love to do like LDS content, if it's just for the LDS audience, I think that's a missed opportunity. I think you can share those same messages with a broader audience, and it can do more for people.
I can just see your future audio bumper. Mason Mac Productions, the intersection of enlightenment and entertainment. Right. I won't trademark it, I promise.
Okay.
But no, that's
Yeah.
great. I'm actually glad that you're looking to do your own content, and that's kind of the focal point, is to make it enlightening as well as entertaining.
There's a lot of space out there for telling just really wholesome stories, but to the general audience, and so making inspiring messages, but also entertaining. And I think I've gotten to work on a lot of projects like that, and in my career, and so I know that there is. But I've also done a lot of projects that are a little too niche, that I feel like it's a shame that people don't get a chance to see these, because it's just in no way marketable to them.
Right.
And so I would love to sort of cross that bridge, and or find that intersection where I can make entertaining but wholesome entertainment, for audiences and for families. And I can't remember what film it was, but just recently that there was a really successful film that was so clean, and I was like, this shows there's a market
Yeah.
who wants wholesome I think, I mean, even just like, because I take my kids to the movies, or my kid to the movie, Wild Robot got me, man. I was like tearing up in that movie, and I was like, this is a beautiful story. And I was like, well, how come we don't just tell messages like this? Like, it's just a beautiful movie about connection, and in a strange way, the human experience, even though it's about a robot and a goose. But so yeah, so I would love to tell stories like that, and then also just sort of fulfill some of the things I wish I could do in life, that there's no way I would ever be able to be, like a superhero, or and I would love to play a role like that, or an action character that is like, okay, those are things that I can pretend to be, but I'm not cool enough to actually be uh, a war vet, or something that the real heroes out there.
Well, you're a father that cares about your son. You are a real hero and a real superhero. You wanting to raise a good son, you wanting to raise a good family, is probably the best contribution that you could make on a better future society. And man, how cool would it be if your production company included your wife and kid, you know,
Yeah.
to where they take a big interest in learning the craft as well, and then pretty soon it's a family production company,
Yeah.
and you can create great content with the family. So,
Mhm.
like the olden days when they would wash clothes or cook a meal. It took them so long because they didn't have modern conveniences, but it also required all of them to work together to get it done. And
Yeah.
so, in a day when they did not have time saving conveniences, they had more time together because they were working together.
Yeah,
That's,
I actually just bought a camera today, a new camera, Sony FX3,
oh, that's a good
um,
one.
and my son was in the car with me when I went and bought it, and I was like, just so you know, this is a very, because we have a little toy camera that he videos and takes pictures on, and things like that, and I was like, this camera is a little more expensive, and so you got to be a little bit older before I can teach you how to use it, and yeah, it would be a cool moment to have a shared interest like that. I obviously don't want to induct them into an industry the way it is, but if I'm able to write my own journey and path, and do it the way I'd like to do it, then I would be more than happy to share that experience with them.
I like the way you put that because you want the environment to be safe for your child
Yes,
to go into.
absolutely.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before that there's a really nice, clean film that came out recently that was really successful. And we're finding that there's a lot of people that are quite disgruntled with what Hollywood has to offer anymore,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that having something that's family friendly and clean is it's more likely to sell now because of it.
Yeah.
So it's marketable. That's the word I was looking for. And on that note, the first time that I talked to you, Mason, we had a brief visit about the potential of a Joseph Smith TV series to
Hmm.
investigate his full life and ministry. And so,
Hmm.
one question I wanted to ask is if there was a Joseph Smith TV series and you could pick one role in church history, what character would it be and why?
Oh gosh. Joseph, I've played Joseph before. I've played him twice actually. In fact, I've played every Smith um, outside of Don Carlos. I played every Smith brother,
Wow.
including Joseph. And so, of all the characters out there that have affected my life and my testimony, I should say the most, it would have been when I got to play Joseph. And so there is a special place in my heart playing a character like him. And there's a lot of opportunities to play him in a different, show his life in a different light, because if I did so much research becoming Joseph that I kind of really learned who he was as a man versus just the prophet that I think was so, that is almost like second nature to play if you were raised in the church, because you just sort of know what prophets, how they are, and the cadence in which they share their revelations and things like that. And
Hmm.
but when you get to see the person behind the curtain, that was the stuff that was really cool to me. I was like, whoa, like this guy was this was a guy's guy. This was a dude, a man. I mean, he would just like be like wrestle you in the street kind of guy, like just for sport. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, what an interesting guy. Like the fact that he's not only doing these amazing performing these miracles and translating the Book of Mormon and restoring the gospel, but he's also like someone who I'd probably watch football with on Monday night. So it was one of those. So there is a lot of specialness to that character. I would love to, in that part of church history, I would definitely love to play a character like that.
Brother Joseph, these gentlemen would like a word with you.
Certainly.
Oh, Mr. Smith. It's a pleasure. I'm Wilbur Fugit. This is Dr. Harris.
Mr. Fugit, Mr. Harris. Where are you from?
We're from Kinderhook. We're just simple folk looking for some honest answers.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
I'm not the right probably just overall demographic or race for it, but I've always had a very connection with Alma the Younger story, because my story was so closely felt like his
Your
story.
redemption arc is yeah.
And I mean, obviously, he went on to become one of the greatest missionaries of all time. How you could turn your life around and be a tool for God, and a character like that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
It would be really fun to play.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
those type have a lot of complexity as well. And so as an actor, you'd really get to explore and find out all the different nuances of what these people went through. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm like way too Anglo-Saxon white to play a character like that. But I do resonate so much with what that man went through. And so a character like that's really cool. I wouldn't ever want to play a role like Jesus. I feel like that is just too sacred and heavy of a role that I would probably scare me a little too much. But
yeah,
I
can understand that.
Joseph would be a really cool one. But I don't know. Anytime I get an opportunity be anyone. I think is special, and
Okay.
so yeah.
Well,
So really,
that's really really good to know, honestly. You know, because I'd like to see you take on one of those complex roles that very few people can do, because I know your skill set could accomplish it, and you understand how to research for a character, and you understand character arcs. You've been through character arcs, so you've got some internal relatability. So thank you for sharing that with me, Mason. Last question is, what's next for Mason Davis?
I have several feature films that I've written, and I think I'm at this stage where I'm ready to jump into the director's seat and hopefully direct my first feature. So
Okay.
I'm hoping to raise money for one of my features, even if I can just start with a short film or just a proof of concept piece to bring them to life and start that way. But I've made a list a long time ago. I haven't actually looked at it in a few months, but I made a list of every genre of film that I would love to do at least one movie in.
Wow.
And it's rather extensive. So I've got a long way to start knocking off that, chipping away at that list. And so I've just started writing scripts for each of them. There is a really special pioneer one, just because of the topic of your podcast and in this conversation. There is that is has personal story to me, because it is my ancestor, and
awesome.
And it's probably the greatest love story I've ever heard of.
Okay.
In film, in anything, and it just so happens to be a pioneer story as well. So it is an epic, and have to be made on a scale much larger than what we've seen as far as like 17 Miracles or Ephraim's Rescue. It would have to be made on a very large scale, but it is a film that would be a dream come true to play my ancestor in this story, and portray him, as well as I don't know about directing at the same time. There's so many talented directors who have done films in that genre that it may make more sense to bring someone on who have the connections and experience selling those films. But
if you were playing the ancestor,
yeah,
if I was
playing the male lead, if not, I would love to direct it.
Awesome. Do we get to know the ancestor and hear the film title, so when it comes out we can make sure we get our theater tickets?
I don't have a title for it.
Okay.
I don't. I'm so worried because I'm so worried if someone's stealing the IP.
Yeah,
because
understood.
it really is a story that I'm really surprised hasn't been told, because I know the church has this story and they share it, parts of it, at the visitor center. But I haven't actually. I have all the research material because I have their journals, the copies of their journals, and it's just been sitting on my nightstand for me to finally have a moment to sit down and read them before I start putting pen to paper.
This is awesome. Nope, don't share anything that would get your IP stolen, for sure. But what a cool story. I want to see it come out. I want to see you be a director and an actor, and keep being a great father, and produce content that's entertaining and enlightening. I mean, that's what Faithful Film's all about. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, I appreciate you, and thank you for all the kind words. And I don't feel like somebody who deserves like stuff like that. And it's always weird when like people treat you like you're like somebody of like importance, when I'm like, I'm just a normal guy. like I'm just like a normal dude. Like,
well,
just
I can
like
say
kicking back
this.
with people.
I already admired you, but I didn't know your redemption story and some of the struggles you've had in your life, and how you've come to be the man that you are today. So if it was possible to just reach over there and just give you a hug, I'd do it right now, because I'm proud of you, man. I'm really proud of you. I'm glad to know the heart of the actor that I've admired in these films, that there's actually a good man there too, and it's not just an act in some cases. You know what I mean?
That means a lot.
I'm glad that it's not just a mask. There is a great heart there. So thank you for that. It's a good example. And man, if you ever want to talk again, just for another glorified therapy session.
I could do this all day, honestly. This is fun for me, and
Okay,
this is
good.
actually the thing that my wife, she's like, I'm leaving because she knows I could talk film all day with anybody.
She's like, I'm not
so
going to
she's like,
get
all right,
time
I'm
with
gonna
him right
go.
now.
She's like, I'm going to Costco because who knows if you'll be done by the time I get back.
No, that's all right. Well, guys, his name is Mason Davis. Great guy, great actor. He's been in a lot of films, and there's more to come, I'm sure, despite the recent setbacks. So, again, Mason, thank you for joining me, and can't wait to see what's next.